In this video, I'm talking about triads once again, and I have already made a number of triad videos, and I hope by this point I no longer need to convince you how important, how useful triads are. And for me, they're one of the main ways that I understand the fretboard. I'm using triads constantly, whether I'm playing rhythm guitar and fills or whether I'm guitar soloing. And what I have for you in this video is a triad exercise. For me, it's kind of the ultimate triad workout. And we're going to be using all of the most commonly used triad shapes on all of the string sets. We're going to be going from one end of the fretboard to the other, and we're going to be playing in all 12 keys. And I think for the average player, this exercise is probably going to be quite challenging. It requires really solid knowledge of the fretboard and quite a bit of concentration if you're going to get all the way through the exercise without making a mistake. And for many of you, this exercise will be a bit of a project. It's not something you can just get together in a day or two, but that's totally fine. I think it's well worth putting in the time on an exercise like this. It really will improve your guitar playing in all kinds of ways. So let's get started. I'm just going to play through the exercise and then I'll take you through exactly what's going on. And I'm just going to talk over myself for a moment, if that's okay, because let's face it, this kind of exercise is pretty dry. It's not the most thrilling thing to practice or to listen to, but really that's beside the point. It's good for you to work on this kind of thing. And if you are the kind of person who is particularly resistant to working on these kind of exercises, I'd recommend just making it as painless as possible and just working on this kind of thing for 5 minutes each time you pick up the guitar, just treating it as a kind of warm-up exercise before you get down to playing and practicing properly. And if you do put the time in, if you do the work, then you'll definitely see some payoffs and some benefits from this kind of thing. And the way this exercise is working is we're moving around the cycle of fifths, and I'll talk a bit more about that in just a moment. It's just a way of playing something in all 12 keys. And what I'm doing is playing triad shapes on each of the string sets. I'm starting in the lowest possible position on the neck, and then I'm playing 2 shapes on each set of strings, and that forces you to move diagonally up the fretboard. So I'm starting down low with each key and ending somewhere higher up the fretboard, then I'm coming down again, then I'm moving round the circle into the next key. And it's a really thorough way of practicing this stuff. It means you're practicing all of the most commonly used shapes in every single key. just want to whiz through some triad basics. I have spoken about this stuff in a number of other videos, and this exercise really is more of an intermediate or advanced exercise. So if these concepts and ideas are completely new to you, you might want to check out one of those earlier videos. But just very quickly, we're talking about triads here, 3-note chords, and I'm playing all these 3 notes in the same octave, so playing them on 3 adjacent strings. Let's just see how that works on the top string set, so strings 1, 2 and 3. Now triads are built using the 1st, 3rd and 5th notes of a major scale. So if you want a C major triad, you take the C major scale, you take the 1st note, which is C, the 3rd note, which is E, and the 5th note, which is G, C, E, G. That gives you a simple C major triad. And then what you can do is you can invert those notes, change the order of those notes to come up with 2 further shapes. So this shape here, root 3rd, 5th, C, E, G, that's what's known as root position. The root is the lowest note in that shape. If you make the 3rd, or an E, the lowest note in that shape, just sort of juggle the notes around, then you arrive at this, E, G and C. You can find those same 3 notes higher up on the same string set, and we've inverted that triad. This is what's known as the 1st inversion C major triad, so E, G, C. And then we can do that once again. We can put the 5th as the lowest note, so the G, and then C, and then E. We've got a further shape here. It's still a C major triad, but this is now in the 2nd inversion, meaning the 5th is in the bass. So we've got root position, 1st inversion, 2nd inversion, and then you can kind of go round that cycle. So we've got the root position up here and 1st inversion up here. You can actually go down below the root position down here to find this 1st inversion shape here. So that's all of the C major triads on the top set of strings. And then you can find those same triad shapes on the other string sets. So when I'm talking about string sets, it's just groups of 3 strings. So the next string set would be strings 2, 3 and 4, and the C major triad shapes would be like this. So those same notes, the actual shapes are going to be different, the finger shapes, just because of the way the guitar is tuned. And then we can go to the next string set, so 3, 4, 5, and you've got these shapes. And then over onto the lowest string set, like so. So just dealing with those same 3 notes, C, E and G, but just finding them on all those string sets in those different inversions. That's giving you all of the possible C major triads, keeping those notes within 1 octave. I'm not getting into spread triads or anything like that in this particular video. And when you're learning these triads, you can come at them in a few different ways. And on one level, we've just got some finger shapes here, and you can get those shapes under your fingers. Muscle memory kicks in, and you can just find those shapes up and down the fretboard. That's fine, and it's absolutely okay to think in terms of shapes, but I think you probably want to go a little bit deeper as you get to be more of an advanced player, and you certainly want to be aware of where the root notes are in those shapes. For me, that's one of my main reference points. If I'm finding these shapes, if I want to find them in different keys, if I want to move between different triads, it's really important to know where the root notes are. So in these C major shapes, for example, knowing where that C note is in each of these shapes. And then beyond that, I think you want to be aware of the names of the other notes in each triad shape as well. So the 3rd and the 5th. So in the case of C major, the 3rd is the E and the 5th is the G. And C major is a good starting point in music theory. That's usually where you start, but you want to go around all of the other triads as well and try and learn the notes in each of those triad shapes and just try and commit those to memory. So if you are more of a beginner with this kind of stuff, I would just stick with 1 string set and just gradually work your way through the keys, just doing this kind of horizontal drill up and down the fretboard, just finding your root position, 1st inversion, 2nd, it's going up and down like that, and doing it probably in the most common guitar keys to start with. I'll do it in C major, and then maybe using E triads or A triads, just because they're such a common key on the guitar. So E, and so on. So that's the basics of triads. For this particular video, for this exercise, I'm going to assume that all of that stuff is fairly familiar to you already, and we're going to take things up a notch or two, and we're going to be moving between the different string sets across all 12 different keys. And in order to ensure that we're working in all 12 keys, we're going to use the circle of fifths. This is a time-honoured way of practicing something in all 12 keys. It's what jazz players use a lot, it's what classical musicians use. And if you're unfamiliar with the circle of fifths, it's just a circle with C major at the top and then all 12 keys written around the outside, going up in jumps of a fifth. So you start with C, and if you're going clockwise around the circle, then you reach G, which is up a fifth from C, and then you're going up to D, A, E, B, etc. around the circle. Or you could go the other way round, and that can be seen as going up a fourth or down a fifth. I mean, fourths and fifths are kind of inversions of one another. The jazz player would tend to go anti-clockwise around the circle, so starting with C, and then you go to F, which is down a fifth or up a fourth, and then you've got B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, etc. round the circle. So that's what I'm doing in this exercise, is going anti-clockwise around the cycle. Let me show you exactly how this exercise works then. And what I'm doing is starting on the lowest string set, so strings 4, 5 and 6, and starting in the key of C major with the lowest available triad shape, which happens to be this one. Depending on the key, it will be a different shape, a different inversion. So with C major, we've got G, C, E. This is our second inversion triad shape, and that might be quite challenging to find the lowest available shape when you first start doing this exercise. It's kind of fairly easy to find the root position shape, which is this, but then you've got some space down below that, so we can actually go lower down to this shape. This is our lowest available C major triad shape. And then what I'm doing is playing 2 triad shapes on each string set. So I've got this second inversion shape. Next along the neck, we're going to have the root position shape. Then I'm going to move over to the next string set. So over onto strings 3, 4 and 5. And we've got root position shape here. We're going to go to the first inversion shape on the next string set. So that would look like this. It kind of overlaps with the previous triad shape here. We've got E, G and C. This is first inversion. And then I'm going to go along the neck on that same string set to G, C and E, our second inversion shape. So far we have, and notice how this is taking us diagonally up the fretboard. We're going over onto the next string set now. Overlaps with the previous shape. We've got a root position shape here, and then first inversion. And then over onto the top string set, we've got G, C, E, second inversion, and we're ending here with this root position shape. So starting on the lowest possible shape, 2 triads on each string set. And then we can descend. That's the first part of the exercise. Try and make this sound as nice, as beautiful as you can. I'm playing this finger style, so with a thumb and then 2 fingers, just playing all of the notes at the same time, trying to get a nice, clear, balanced sound. All the notes at the same time. That might be enough of an exercise to start with. You might just want to work on that for a week, just getting your C major triad shapes together before moving on to the next key. So what am I thinking when I'm going through this exercise? And as I've already said, you can think about these triads in a number of different ways. And yes, on one level it just becomes a muscle memory thing, and I can just jump through those C shapes in a fairly mindless kind of a way. If you've done that enough times, those shapes just seem to be right there under your fingers. But I do recommend thinking a bit more deeply and not just going through this exercise mindlessly. And for me, the root notes are super important, and I can see where those C root notes are all over the fretboard, and that's serving as my main reference point here, so I'm super aware of where those C's are. So as I play each of these shapes, it's almost as though that C note is lighting up on the fretboard. And beyond that, it's good to be aware of the other notes in these shapes as well. So with each of these shapes, you've got the root note, and then with the second inversion shape, I know that the fifth is in the bass. I've got the third on top. With this shape, I've got the fifth on top. That top note in particular is important. That's the note that seems to jump out when you listen to these triad shapes. So it can be a kind of ear training exercise as well. You do want to be conscious of how these triad shapes sound, to be able to identify which inversion you're playing by ear, and to be able to hear what note is on the top of each of these shapes. So let's move on to the next key. I'm not going to go through all 12 keys here, or we'll be here for about 2 hours, I think, but I'll just show you the next couple of keys, and once you get the basic idea of how this works, you'll be able to get it together in all 12 keys. I will make a tab available for those of you who would find that useful, but I do recommend trying to work this stuff out for yourself. So thinking about the triad shapes, the notes in the triad, identifying the lowest shape, and just finding these shapes yourself on the fretboard. It's hard work, but definitely good for you. So with the F triad, that will be the next one. So with F here, the root position triad on the lowest string set is right up here, so we can definitely play some shapes down lower than that. So we've actually got second inversion, first inversion here. This is the lowest available F major triad shape. So we've got an A, a C and an F. So F, A, C, the notes in the F major triad. This one has got the A in the bass, it's the first inversion, and it works in exactly the same way. So we're going to go from here to the next triad shape, second inversion, over onto the next string set, two shapes there, over onto the next string set, and finally over onto the top string set. And this shape here, this second inversion shape, that's our highest shape. Then we're descending, and we go on round the cycle. So if we're going anti-clockwise round the circle, after F we've got B flat, and the lowest available B flat would be this one here. So the notes in the B flat triad are B flat, D and F, and here we've got an F as the lowest note, B flat and a D. So it's a nice sounding shape actually. This is a second inversion shape. Just moving up through the shapes, next string set, that's our highest shape. Coming down, and it does make you think. I think personally, you're finding this sort of low B flat shape. It's not a shape that I use particularly often. I find that with these triads, I'm super confident and quick on E and A and G, those commonly used guitar keys, but with things like G flat or B flat, I might be a little bit slower, and I can still find the shapes, but there might just be that little bit of a time lag in there. And that's really the basic idea. So always just finding that lowest shape, two triads on each string set, going up and then coming down again. And it might be that you just need to spend some time just on each key before you put all of this together as an exercise. Depending on your current level of ability, it might take weeks or months to get the entire exercise together, which is totally fine. You might want to spend a week or two just working on one key, just drilling that up and down, and then when you're ready, moving on to the next one. So I'll just take you through one more key. Where were we? We just did B flat, so E flat is going to be next. And again, finding the lowest shape, be there, and then just taking it up in exactly the same fashion. So that's the exercise, and then the ultimate challenge would be just to play the entire thing all the way through, all 12 keys, without making any mistakes. So be quite tough on yourself. Play it in time, get to those shapes in time. And if you're kind of fluffing the shapes or you're not recalling them properly, then you need to do some more practice. Maybe just go back to the individual keys, just drill those shapes once again until you're ready to put it all together. And it does take a lot of concentration to be able to do this. And speed isn't really important in this exercise. You can start as slowly as you want, just spend a good long time on each triad shape, just give yourself a bit of thinking time. And then when you're ready, perhaps you can try it with a metronome or with a backing track, just to give yourself a bit of pressure on yourself to find these shapes quickly. And once you can do it, there are various ways you could make the exercise a little bit more interesting. So I was just playing one triad shape every couple of beats in my little playthrough at the start of this video, but you could introduce a little bit more rhythm and kind of improvise a bit of rhythm with these shapes. So it a little bit more interesting. You could arpeggiate these triad shapes. So triads are certainly not just a rhythm guitar thing, and I use triads a lot when I'm soloing, just as a way of hitting chord tones. So a good way into that might just be to play these notes separately in various different orders. You can go straight up, you could go backwards through the notes, or maybe you could start on the middle note. So lots of ways you could spice up this exercise and make it a bit more interesting and a bit more challenging once you've got that basic exercise together. So just to sum up, this is a really worthwhile exercise and something that I personally find very, very beneficial. And I think with triads, it's not just something that you can learn and then tick off your list and then you move on to some so-called more advanced stuff. I think triads are so important. They're just one of the fundamental ways of understanding the guitar and the fretboard. So it's something you should always be working on and revisiting and just deepening your understanding of this stuff. That's something that I like to do. I do find that if I don't work on this kind of thing, I get a little bit lazy and I kind of lose my sharpness with this kind of thing. So it's something that I definitely return to from time to time. And just getting this video together this week and going through this exercise, it's definitely sharpened up my triad skills quite a bit. So there we are. Hope you found this video interesting. Hope you found working on this exercise useful and beneficial to your playing. If you'd like tab and a backing track, that's going to be up on the Patreon page as usual. Thanks for watching. See you next time.